Hello, everybody, welcome back. Today, we are going to build a very interesting game called the Fortune Teller game, in which we are going to use the concepts of lists. Now, this is a part of our Scratch programming class. So, this will be class number 13. Uh, as you know, lists allow us to build very advanced games. Uh, Lists are a powerful construct which we can use in many ways. And it turns out that a very good way to learn lists is through this game, right? So while the game is fun in itself, it's also is a good way to understand what lists are and how do we use them, right? So let's get started. I'll show you first what is the fortune teller game that we are looking at, right? So basically here we have um, you know let's say if I go here, right? So when I click this flag, I get a magician asking me, she has a crystal ball, she wants me to ask a yes or no question, right? And is today a good day, right? Now when I ask this question, her crystal ball does something and she tells me I do not think so. Then she asks me to ask another question and say, am I a good person, right? Let's say, and again the crystal ball is doing something and tells me, well, my time is going to be better soon. Let's say, is tomorrow, a fortunate day for me, right? Let's say I ask this and it says something like, I would rather not answer that, right? So it's a very funny game. Now let's say I ask this again, am I a good person, right? So it answers that, but it says I do not think so. But let's say I ask the same question again, am I a good person, right? If I do that, since I asked this question again, it got angry. I had already asked her this question, so the game gets over, right? So I have to ask a question exactly once. The magician answers me. If I ask another time, the game kind of gets over, right? So that's the simple game. Like I said, the objective here is to figure out how we could use, how we could use lists in building this game. So it's for us to indirectly learn lists and the many features that lists bring into on the table, right? So let's get started. So first thing I'll do is to remove the cat sprite, right? Instead, I'm going to choose a sprite called the wizard, right? So this wizard is here. Oops, wizard. So I use this wizard girl, and I also change the backdrop to the witch room, right? So this witch house, right? So this backdrop has become the witch house. Now I can move my witch a little bit away. So I also remember I had a crystal ball, right? So I'm going to use a combination of drawing and an existing sprite to create a very simple crystal ball, right? So how do I do that? I say choose a sprite. I say go paint a sprite, right? And once I go here, right, I basically just create, say, two rectangles. I make them black in color, right? So reduce the thing here. So I fill them with black and I create one more such rectangle, right? It's just on top of this. So I create this here, right? Maybe a little bit of gap. Very simple crystal ball, right? And then I'm going to introduce the ball part of it by just adding a new costume of a ball, right? So I search here a ball, say I use this one, right? So I go and select this ball, right? I copy this and I go and paste it. I paste it here, right? So I get this ball. Now I'll make this a little bit bigger so that it looks nicer. So I make it a little bit bigger, right? In fact, I can move this whole thing a bit below here so it comes nicely aligned to the center, right? I make the ball a bit big, right? And now I've got a very simple crystal ball. It's rather big. We'll make it small. uh, I'll delete this particular costume. I'll create one more costume here because remember I want the crystal ball to blink, right? So how do I do that? Again, well, go to this fill and let's use some interesting colors, right? So it's right now blue and blue. Maybe I can use, let's say, blue and yellow, in which case when I fill this, it becomes something like this, right? Very simple. There are many other ways you can do this, but this gives it a feeling that it's lit up, right? So I've got two costumes of the crystal ball. Notice that when I sort of flick through these costumes, it creates an effect that the crystal ball is blinking, right? So we will use this later on as we build the game. For now, let's just place this ball somewhere here, and it's very big, so I'll reduce the size to something like say 70%, right? So now it's like just nice, right? Also, I'll switch the costume to this, right? So this is the crystal ball. The magician is going to sort of ask the crystal ball what my questions are. I mean, what is the answer to my questions, right? Uh, Now, remember, the magician here was answering questions which were somewhat like cheek and tongue, right? A little bit funny, little bit witty, little bit humorous, right? So, how did we create that? Basically, that is using a list, right? Now, recall lists are like big brothers of variables, right? So, variables were like containers, individual containers which stored information for us. Lists are like their big brothers. Instead of just storing one piece of information, lists store many small containers together, right? So that's the whole idea of a list. How do we create a list? Let's see now, right? For the wizard answer. So I'll go here, I'll click on this block called make a list, right? Now, when I say make a list, just like make a variable, I get to define a new list. And here I'm going to call it, you know, wizard answers. Let's say wizard answers. So I get this list, I make it available to everybody. It doesn't really matter in this code. Now, the moment I do this, just like in case of variables, I now get a kind of place where this list is kept, right? So I'll, for now, I'll, untick this box so I don't need to see it. Of course, later on we will be seeing it, right? Now, remember, when we have a variable, we have to set the variable value before the game starts, right? So here is an equivalent thing that has to be done is to fill up this list called wizard answers, right? And how do we do that? Let's see now, right? So I'll put a little bit of code for the wizard girl, right? Because this she's the real sort of hero of this lesson. So I say when flag clicked, right? I just use a broadcast to say in a broadcast here I say prepare answers, right? So what I really mean is that fill up this list which contains the answers, right? Now, since I'm sending a broadcast, I must have, when I receive, say, prepare answers. So when I receive prepare answers, what do I do? Recall, what we want to do really is to fill up values in this list called wizard answers, right? And the way to do that is to use this command called add something to wizard answers, right? So wizard answer is a list. Now, what we are going to add here is say things like, anything that the wizard might answer. So for instance, I can say absolutely, right? Uh, I can say, let's say I'll duplicate this, right? I'll say maybe in this case, I can say maybe, right? Or I can say, be creative here. You can write, say a lot of things. Perhaps, so perhaps it it may happen tomorrow, right? Let's say I duplicate all these three and I now say, I don't want to answer that. Don't think, let's say I say, I don't think you want to know, right? Think you want to know. Likewise, I might say, look, that is a silly question, right? Then I might be more terse and say, yes, right? And I might say, let's say, duplicate all this. I might say, let's say in one question, I might say no, right? And another question, I might say to say, let's say, after a few years, this will be correct, right? So be creative here. You don't have to specifically follow these answers, right? Why do you want to know, right? So I'm just creating, say, 8 or 9 answers. So I've got three. Let's say maybe I can create three more. Let's say these three, and I can just say, let's say, I will say, this question is meaningless, right? Let's say, I mean, anything really, right? Then I might say, uh, decide. Well, let's say you may be right, right? So I say you may be right. And let's say one more, last one we can give is please look towards the ceiling waiting for an answer. Okay, so let's say enough. I mean, we have created enough of these, right? I've basically given commands to add all these answers into the list. Right now, let's see what happens when we run this code. And for this purpose, I'm going to say let's turn on this tick box, which will, so first I'll delete all of this, right? So I'll delete this. Now the moment I click flag, right, I get 12 answers inside my list. Notice this is absolutely, maybe, perhaps, and so on and so forth, right? So effectively I have created the list of answers that the wizard is going to use, right? Now, it is important to notice that if I keep doing, let's say, keep clicking on the flag, every time the list of the length of the list is increasing, right? And that's happening because Sprite or the wizard is basically adding these elements again and again, right? So to avoid that, what I would do is to use this block called delete all of the wizard answers. So I say delete all of wizard answers and then prepare the list. So what that does is, I have every time I click the flag, I get exactly this list into my wizard answers, right? Now, it turns out that for this particular game, we could have used a method called import, right? But in general, during a code, if you want to change a list, add is the feature, add is the block we use, and hence we used add. It's more useful, in my opinion, right? All right, so now that we have created the wizard's list of answers, right, let's just use the broadcast to say that, look, the list is ready and some other things can happen, right? So let's say I'll say, uh, you know, let's say I'll say, I'll go to events and say broadcast, right? Let's say this broadcast could be answers ready, right? So again, it doesn't matter what the name of this broadcast is. So it said prepare answers. Prepare answer was received here. It did all this. And then finally it says answers are now ready, right? So which means other things can go on, right? So broadcast helps us sequence things. And as we will see now, so once by doing this broadcast, we are making sure that the list is completely populated before anything else happens, right? So now I want the sprite to greet me. And again, I'm going to introduce more features of the list blocks in that process, right? So I say when I receive answers ready, right? When I receive answers ready, perhaps I can say hello for say 2 seconds, right? And then I can say maybe I can duplicate this and say welcome to my magic room. So welcome to my magic room, say for also for 2 seconds, right? And now I'm going to say I'm going to use this again along with the join apple banana block, right? I'm going to use two instances of this, in fact. So join apple banana, and inside this again I put join apple banana because I am going to have the wizard tell me how many possible answers it can give me, right? So I'll say my crystal ball can give me let's say uh, up to so I know how do I know how many answers it can give me? It is basically the number of items inside this list called wizard answers, right? So if I've got, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, say 12 items, I don't need to count, myself. I can use a feature of Scratch to do so for me, right? So I will say go to variables, go to list, right? There is an item called length of wizard answers, right? So notice what will happen here when I receive answers ready. I'm going to say, let's say, answers, right? So when I do this, right? So what happens is, uh, when I receive answer ready, it says hello for 2 seconds. It says welcome to my magic room for 2 seconds again, and then it says my crystal ball can give me up to length of wizard answers for 2 seconds. Let's see how this works out, right? So when I do this, it says hello, right? Welcome to my magic room. My crystal ball can give you up to 12 answers, right? So I think I have to add a little bit of space here just to get it perfectly correct, right? Now with this done, so we have populated a list first by using the add block, and we have also used the length of wizard answer block to tell me how many elements there were inside the list that we created, right? Now we are ready to start asking questions. So I will use another broadcast here to say, you know, please start asking questions, right? So I'll say call it ask, right? So I say ask this question, and now we are going to say, let's see what the user wants to ask, right? Remember, wizard is going to answer from this list, but the user must ask a question, right? So again, since I've used a broadcast here, I say when I receive ask, right? When I receive ask, I will go to the sensing block and say ask what's your name and weight. Instead of that, I can say ask me a yes or no question, right? So here basically I'm saying ask me a question whose answer is either yes or no, right? Now this ask block, remember, pops out a dialog in which we have to answer something, and whatever we answer gets written into this variable, this internal variable called answer, right? So we will see that, yeah. However, remember, we also had a crystal ball, so let's use this opportunity to create some kind of effects on the crystal ball, right? So it's simple. We have already created two costumes for the crystal ball. We will now use them, right? So what I can do is that I can at this point go and say broadcast, say crystal ball, right? I just call it, you know, crystal ball, sorry, say crystal ball. So I'll say broadcast crystal ball and wait, right? Now this broadcast and wait is quite similar to broadcast, except that it will broadcast and then it will wait for whatever action has to happen in when I receive this particular message, right? So I'll go to the to the let's say the crystal ball, and I'll say when I receive crystal ball, right? When I receive crystal ball, repeat, say, let's say 6 times, right? It doesn't really matter, but just want to create a little bit of visual effect. Say wait, you know, zero point 0.3 seconds, and say looks next costume, right? So what that will do is, remember, my two costumes are creating the effect of the ball blinking. So that's the effect I'll get. And in the end, I want to make sure that I go back to costume one, right? In fact, on that note, probably it's a good idea to just ensure that when flag clicked, I am in costume one, right? Because costume one is the sort of default costume, right? All right, so now let's see what this does. Remember, I'm asking the sprite to ask me a question, give me a dialogue that ask me a yes or no question, right? And once I do that, right, it's going to basically, it's waiting there, right? The moment I click enter, we'll see what happens. This broadcast comes into play, right? And so it says hello, it says welcome to my magic room, and my crystal ball can give up to 12 answers. So it says ask me a yes or no question, and it, because of this ask block, it pops out this dialog box for me. Let's say I ask, is today a lucky day, right? Now with this question asked, right, I expect the broadcast statement to come into play, and we see what happens, right? You see that the crystal ball starts to blink, right? Why does it blink? Because after this question is completed, when I click the enter there, I broadcast a message called crystal ball. That crystal ball causes all this, and since it's a broadcast and wait, in fact my execution will wait at this point till that crystal ball message code gets over, right? Now let's say I want the sprite to answer back an answer, right? Now remember, I wanted it to pick up any answer at random, right? So let's see how we can do that, yeah. Again, using lists. So I'll go to the lists block, right? And I'll say, once this broadcast and wait is done, I'll say in the looks block, say, you know, basically I want it to give me an answer from there. So let's say I said, right, item number, right? Let's say I used item one of wizard answers for, let's say, 2 seconds, right? So what this will do is that it will pick up the first item from this list, and answer me, right? Let's just see this, right? So if I said hello, uh, welcome to my magic room, up to 12 answers, standard stuff, right? Ask me a single question. So I say, let's say, am I a good person, right? And when I ask this question, crystal ball will blink because of the broadcast, and it says absolutely. That's because the the command I have used here is item one of wizard answers. Now see this very carefully. This is item one, which means that this particular command is going to give me the value of what is stored inside the first item of this list, wizard answers, right? And which in this case is absolutely, right? So we will have a slightly different command which we'll use a little bit later. Hence, pay attention to this very closely, right? Now, in my game, I do not want always answer one to be given. In fact, I want any answer to be given to me, right? So what I could do is I could go back and use my random number generator, right, which is this, and I can tell him that, look, give me an answer which is randomly chosen from the entire list, which means that I can say pick random between, you know, 1 and, remember we use the length of the wizard answer, so I can again use this command and say pick a random number between 1 and length of wizard answers. Pick that. So when I say item so and so, it's like it is going to pick a random number, go to the list, whatever these values are from that list, it's going to show me, right? So with this, what will happen is that the sprite will answer me randomly, right? So if I did this, let's say, right, if I say, it says hello, I mean the regular stuff happens, welcome to my magic room, uh, you know this thing, ask me a yes or no question, will it rain today, right? If I ask this question, the crystal ball blinks and it says absolutely. It just happened to be that it picked up the random number one, right? As we will see later on, we will have the response uh, coming again and again, right? By different response, because it's basically picking up a random number, right? Now I want this process to continue forever until something happens, right? So what I can do here is to again use a broadcast, right? So I'll use broadcast, let's say ask again, right? So if I did this, right, let's say I did this code, basically it's going to ask me forever, right? So whenever it finishes on broadcast, it will again broadcast ask and it will ask me again, right? So I can ask many questions. The crystal ball will keep changing the answer depending on the random number, right? Let's just briefly see this. So if I did this, so again, this is the beginning part is common all the time, right? So it says, ask me a yes or no question. I ask, is it a good day, right? So if I say if it's a good day, right, the crystal ball blinks, right? It says no, right? Now, again, it asks me a question. That's because of this particular broadcast. It happened again. It asked me a question once again, right? So I say, am I a good person, right? I want to be, hopefully, it'll say yes. Let's see, right? If I do that, right? That's a silly question. Oops. So, yeah. Maybe, will I be lucky tomorrow? Will I be lucky tomorrow, right? Let's see what it answers. So it does something, goes and picks up that list, and he says, why do you want to know, right? What I want you to notice is that it's picking up a different answer all the time, and that's simply because we have used item pick a random number between 1 to length of wizard answers, right? So it's picking up a random number and going and picking that value from the from the list and telling us, right? Now let's say we want to, this game will looks like will keep on happening forever. We do not want that. So let's say we want to, stop this game once we ask a question that we have already asked, right? So how do we do that, right? So again, we can make use of lists. uh, Before doing so, however, we will have to create a new list, right? So what the sprite can do is to maintain a list and keep track of all the questions that we are asking, right? So for example, make a list, right? And I'll call it your your questions, right? So this is just a name I give. So this list has now been created. It's actually empty, but as the program goes, we'll fill it up, right? Hence, it's a good practice to also duplicate this and delete all of your questions when the program starts. So that only means that it will keep the containers but make them all empty, right? So it will nothing will be there. The list will be there, but there'll be everything else will be empty from there, right? So delete all of your questions. Now remember, whenever I the sprite asks me to ask a question, whatever I ask is basically getting stored in this thing called answer, right? So what I can do here is that every time I get a question, right, which Crystal Ball has answered for me, I can go and add this to the questions that I've asked, right? Remember here, my answer will be the question. Why is that? Because really I am asking the questions and the sprite is answering. Although the nomenclature is a little reversed, but answer here represents the questions that I've asked. So I can keep asking, keep track of what questions I'm asking in this list called your questions. And let's just display it here and see it in action. So when I do this, so it says hello, all the regular stuff happens, magic room. Uh, it'll ask me to ask a question. Let's say I'll say let's say, do you like me? Right? If I ask him this question, ask her actually, right? It says you may be right, probably likes me, right? And we see that the value of that question, which was do you like me, has now been entered into the list called your questions. Let's say I ask one more question. Uh, do you really like me? Really like me, let's say, right? I mean, these questions are whatever you want to ask. It asks me a question. I don't think you want to know. So probably it doesn't really like me after all, right? So the point here is that this also gets added to this list, right? Now, we can use this particular thing to figure out if a question has been asked previously, and if so, maybe we can stop the game, right? So how do we do that, right? I'm going to move this aside a little bit and use a if then else statement, right? So I'm going to say, inside list, I have got a function called the list contains something, right? So here, notice I'm going to ask, is the list your questions? Does it contain the answer or not, right? Why am I using answer? Because really, remember, whatever I reply from the text box gets stored in a variable called answer. So I am checking this list, your questions, and I'm saying, does it contain or not, right? Now, this is a function which will return me a value of 1 if it contains. If it does not contain, it will return me a value of 0, right? So hence I can use it in an if else statement. So if the question is contained, then I can say maybe the sprite doesn't like it because I already asked this question. Say you made me angry. You say made me angry by asking again. It's very impatient. It doesn't like to be asked a question again. And then I can say perhaps. So again, no, I don't need this. So I am again going to use join apple banana right here to say something very special, right? I can look through the list and even tell you which question was the question that you asked me, right? Now, for example, let's say I ask it again, do you like me? That was my question number 1. If I ask again, do you really like me? That was question number 2, right? So I want this number to be told now, right? So I'll say, this was your question number. Let's say I'll leave a little bit of a gap, and here I use a command that's available to me called item number of a thing. Now notice very carefully, this is what we had used previously was actually we have here was item of wizard answers. Here I am using item number of, in this case, answer, not in wizard answers, but in fact in your questions, right? So I am going to tell what number this particular thing exists in, right? So I know this thing exists in because that's already confirmed from this, this if statement. Now I want to know what number it's on. So please make a very clear distinction between item number of this answer and that particular item. So item number refers to this 1, 2, 3, 4. The item itself refers to this orange value here, right? So, basically, I can say this is angry, and then now that it's become a little bit angry, I can say, maybe the game is going to get over. So I will broadcast a message again called, let's say, let's call it a new message, getting over, right? So I'll say a message called getting over. Of course, we will fill this in a little by while, but if my question is not part of an existing list called your questions, it means that I have not previously asked this question. So hence I can do all of this. I can ask this question and again broadcast ask, right? Ask to the next question, right? So with this, my game is pretty much ready. We will see this working, except that I am yet to define what is broadcast getting over resulting in, right? But let's just see this working in just a moment. So when I click the flag, notice everything becomes empty, including your questions, right? Welcome to my magic room. Up to 12 answers can be provided. Ask me a question. Am I nice? Right? Simple question, right? Let's see what it says. It blinks. Perhaps it may happen tomorrow. Maybe today I'm not nice, right? Will today be lucky, right? If I ask this, it says you may be right. So perhaps today is a lucky day, right? Now let's say I go and ask the same question again. Am I nice? Now notice, for a sprite to recognize it as the same question, it must be exactly the same, right? So a little bit punctuation here and there can cause problem, right? So I don't know if I gave a question mark. Looks like I did not. I'm not nice this time, it says. But importantly, I gave a question mark here. I did not do it here. So this time I'll do it carefully. Am I nice, right? If I do this, right, with a question mark, so sprite is angry, and it tells me that was your question number 3, because my question number, am I nice, with a question mark was question number 3 indeed, right? So that's what it told me. Now we are going to complete this game by just defining what happens when I get this getting over. So I say, let's say when I receive getting over, right? When I receive getting over, I'll say, let's say I'll, go here, say repeat 10 times. Now I want this sprite to disappear slowly. So I will say looks change, there's something called color effect. So I'll say change, let's say, you know, ghost effect by say 10, right? Uh, and then I'll say maybe I can also add change volume by -10, so that the volume also, we will add a song just a moment, right? And then I can say wait maybe 0.1 second. So repeat this, basically do this slowly, right? And after that you completely hide, right? So you go and hide, and once you hide, just go and stop everything from the control block, stop all. So that's my getting over. But just to make it more lively, I'm going to add a little bit of sound. Notice this sound will be like a background music which will be always on. So I will put it in a separate forever loop, in a separate when flag clicked, I say forever, and I go and add a sound here. I like this sound called emotional piano. Again, you can choose another song, that's not a problem. I say this emotional piano, it's quite nice, right? And I say, look, in the sound, I say play sound emotional piano until done. Keep doing it forever, right? So now what will happen is I will have music playing. Once I get, the game is going to get over, I'm going to have volume going down. I'm going to have, I'm going to also hide. So to counter all of this, in the beginning, I will say for example, I'll say show, and I'll also set the volume to, you know, um, set volume to 100%, so that I'm able to view myself second time, right? So let's say now what happens. Also, just to clean up, now that we know the function of your questions, I will remove this list from here, right? So now we have this music playing. Welcome to my magic room. So, are you happy with me? Let's say that's my question, right? It says, please look towards the ceiling for an answer. Oops. So, do you like me? Right? If I ask that, right? So it says maybe. So I feel happy. Perhaps I'm tempted to ask again, do you like me? Right? But my sprite got angry. This was a question number two, right? It disappeared slowly, and my game comes to an end, right? So with this, we are done. We have used lists extensively for this game, and like I told in the beginning, this game can be fun. It's like kind of a little bit cheeky. At the same time, it's an exceptionally good introduction to the different features, the different blocks that are available in the lists. So please look through this, practice yourself, and because lists, like I said, is a powerful feature. We'll be using a lot of this as we go forward, right? All right, take care. Thank you so much. Bye bye.